any Ma'at, laws of Ma'at, Ani Ani, any of these different papyruses. Because, and you never know about this. What do you hear when you hear about your ancestors? They tell you that these are aliens, that these are gods, that these are ancient aliens. Disassociating yourself from your ancestors.
These writings can be read as precursors to the legal code in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy.
In societies where...
So, when they talk about the Bible, they mistranslate the dates. They say the dates is in the 1200s. Yeah, we understand it predates it by several hundred years. When we talk about the Bible was just a reintroduction of an more ancient book. So the Bible wasn't created in the 1400s BC. The Bible was reintroduced from an earlier work of our ancestors, which you can see in the culture of the Sumerians through the laws of Hammurabi.
Knowledge and law is transmitted orally and dealt with orally. Precedent is terribly important. But when it got written down, the people who wrote it down had immense power.
Hammurabi's...
So he said when we wrote things, because our oral history, when we wrote things down, we started to write a tremendous amount of writings because we wanted to keep our history in stone for our ancestors. So we wrote everything down. So there's an immense volume of information. If we look in Hawaii and even in America, there's a mass volume of tablets and petroglyphs. They tell you that you have no writing system. Yet these petroglyphs are an ancient form of writing. So when you started writing, you wrote. And that's what these petroglyphs are. That's why they know more about your history than you do.
Code has influenced nearly every civilization since Babylon. Today, even some of its more primitive methods of judgment survive virtually intact. Hammurabi described a ritual called the ordeal, a painful, even deadly test of guilt or innocence. In some remote Bedouin tribes, the ordeal is still practiced, much as it was in the time of Hammurabi. In this rare footage, a holy man called the Mubashi will judge the accused by examining their tongues after they lick a red-hot iron spoon. These men have been accused of theft. They must submit to the ordeal or be found guilty by default. Family members look on anxiously as the young men prepare themselves for the painful ritual. Water doesn't ease the pain. It's meant to cleanse and purify the drinker and to ready him for judgment. The holy man prays and then examines the singed tongues, seeking a sign from God. Only the Mubashi can divine guilt or innocence, and he alone will determine the men's fate. At last, a verdict. One man is found innocent, to the great relief of his family. The other is not as fortunate. Declared guilty, he will be fined for his crime. The ordeal is an intriguing modern-day echo of Hammurabi, but his laws reach even more directly into the present through the Bible.
Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
The Ten Commandments, the foundation of biblical law, and yet only the beginning of a complex set of codes and covenants central to the Old Testament. And in these laws, the clear voice of Hammurabi can still be heard.
Hammurabi set down laws. He didn't innovate a great deal. He merely set down in writing laws which had operated by precedent for hundreds, if not thousands of years, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and principles like this, many of which are still codified in law today.
But the Babylon that shaped the Bible and its laws had its roots in an even earlier civilization, one that reached its peak 7 centuries before Christ. It was the brutal empire of Assyria, a place the Bible called a land bathed in blood. Deadliest of all Mesopotamian armies to sweep through the ancient world were the Assyrians. In the Bible, they are the ultimate symbol of bloody tyranny and ruthless oppression. A 100 years before Nebuchadnezzar took the Israelites captive in Babylon, the Bible tells us the Assyrian king Sennacherib attacked the lands.
So we gotta understand, when we're talking about the Sumerians and the Assyrians and the Babylonians, they're not the same people, okay? The Assyrians are the proto-people, took the lands and the identities and the regions of this Afro-Asian people we call the Sumerians. So as you go back further, like when we were talking about the laws of Hammurabi, Hammurabi was a Sumerian, an Afro-Asian. And these Assyrians are a different people.
The Israelites. In the second book of Kings, the Bible says, "Behold what the kings of Assyria have done to our lands, destroying them utterly."
See, in the Bible, when they talk about the Assyrians, they're not talking about the Sumerians. The people we know as the Israelites, the Yashuranites, they're the people of Samaria. They're the descendants of Samaria, who these Assyrians, who now go by the identity, are trying to kill. You have to realize that they're killing, going after the descendants of Samaria, who is going by the name Israel, which is a fake name created by the Jewish people, white Israel.
The Assyrians were ruled by despotic kings. They believed in absolute power. Now, absolute power means control, and absolute power almost invariably is kept in power by military efficiency and might. And the Assyrians maintained an enormously powerful and efficient war machine. And on the walls of Assyrian kings' palaces were the chronicles of some of their expeditions, written in vainglorious.
Some of these Assyrian kings would be like Tiglath-Pileser and Shalmaneser, who we found through history is Genghis Khan, who in Asia goes by Zingis Khan. Okay? Us in the West, we know him as Genghis Khan, but in his homeland, he is known as Zingis Khan. And in Babylonia, in Mesopotamia, he was called by the name of Tiglath-Pileser and Shalmaneser. These people are the ones who led the descendants of Samaria into captivity, which we know as the captivity of Israel, the Babylonian captivity of Israel today.
Grandiloquent terms.
The Assyrians, they would take a city, and they would stack up the heads of the leading citizens outside the gate, or they would take the king of the city and flay him alive and nail his skin to the wall, or something like that. But everybody did that.
So these were like
Assyrian power symbolized by the royal lion hunt.
So you see the one in the back who has no beard? That's the Native American. At this time, those people were subjugated, similar to how the people in America are subjugated. And then, at that time, those people we know as Native American started to fight for these Assyrians, and they were vassal armies, similar to how America, 90% of its army is people of foreign blood or nationality. So as you can see, the phenotypes matches those who we call or consider today as Native Americans. You look at Chief Joseph in America, he has an artifact, an ancient Native American relic, which has a Semitic script on it that says that it is a receipt for a transaction for sacrificial animals from Mesopotamia to America. So we know that there's this connection. We just don't realize history because it's been flipped upside down.
Lay in the hands of merciless warrior kings.
See them killing the lions. The Sumerians.
Even the Bible betrays grudging admiration.
Behold the Assyrian. Under his shadow dwelt all great nations.
Ezekiel 31. When the city of Rome was in its infancy, Assyria was the greatest empire in the world.
You see us shooting back? And see the full-bearded afro shooting his bow and arrows with his girdles and his headbands. And you see these people with a butt face with no hair. And then you see these barbarians and Proto-Arabian people who are trying to kill you.
For more than 1,000 years, details of Assyrian civilization were few.
You have to watch out because when they're talking about specific time periods, they show you artifacts from different times so that you generalize, you believe that this people is that people is this people. You gotta understand that there's been population changes, usurping.
Even its great capital city of Nineveh was unknown to the modern world. Then, in 1852, these desolate ruins were explored by British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard. What Layard found here, in northern Iraq, was nothing less than the royal palace of Nineveh. an unspoiled treasure of Assyrian civilization. Tunneling like a miner through the earth, Layard uncovered great winged bulls and spectacular artistry, hidden from human view for a millennium. The world was stunned and excited by his breakthrough. Nineveh was another biblical city found, yet more confirmation of the Bible's historical accuracy. But the most momentous of Layard's discoveries was the Great Library of Nineveh, an extraordinary collection of 22,000 clay tablets inscribed with the cuneiform writing of the Assyrians.
The only direct communication that we have with the people of the ancient world, really, is what they left behind in their writings. We can know from that what they ate, what their medical treatments were, what their family life was like, what their politics was like, how they viewed religion.
Details of Assyrian daily life reveal a patriarchal society, a world where commoners, and especially women, had little status. A patriarchal society.
Patriarch society, but we gotta understand, our ancestors' patriarch society looks a lot different than the Europeans' patriarch society. The women had a lot of power. We don't understand that. The women have more say. The Europeans' version of a patriarch system is not the same definition as our ancestors, and many of these writings have been manipulated.
A world where commoners, and especially women, had little status.
Every Assyrian woman, once in her early life, before marriage, would go to the temple of Ishtar, and she would sit on the steps, and she would wait there until some man came along and dropped a coin on the hem of her dress, and then she would go inside with him and do her thing, and that was it.
Yet in this despotic world there was a kind of justice. In marriage, even a wife had certain rights.
A woman could specify in her marriage contract that her husband would have no other wives. She might specify.
See, you gotta understand, when today we talk about patriarchy, we say, well, the man is supreme and the woman is nothing. Shut your mouth, woman. But what you gotta understand, and which is showing you, it's giving you the information right here. It's saying that women had a lot of rights to where they could specify what they wanted in their marriages through a contract. You gotta understand that marriage and contracts was a Sumerian, was a Semitic thing. We instituted these behaviors. So it's just saying is that the women could specify different things that she wanted throughout the marriage. So she had a much more power, similar to our indigenous women today. They got a lot more of a say. Even as masculine as some of us may be, we still allow our women to have say, to input.
He could have all the prostitutes he wanted, but no other wives.
But if ordinary women had only limited status, recent discoveries reveal Assyrian queens enjoyed great privilege.
See how they're talking out of their ass right now, because they're saying that no, they never have. Women was just marginalized. It's patriarchs. It's that patriarchs. What they're doing is they're creating a bubble. So people will gravitate toward matriarch, and what they're doing is bashing the patriarch while giving evidence that the true form of patriarch uplifts the woman, empowers the woman, creates a unity so that the woman's input can strengthen the family. See, you understand? That's a working patriarch system where the woman is used and uplifted.
In 1989, the ancient palace of Nimrud in northern Iraq set the stage for a startling find. Experts called it the most significant discovery since King Tut's tomb, the treasure of Nimrud.
While we were cleaning some of the rooms, we discovered that there are some indications for a vaulting underneath the floor. We took everything out and we tried to sort it, and we discovered that we have here the bodies of at least 2 queens.
Solid gold bracelets still adorned their...
Look at those bracelets. I mean, if you come to Hawaii and you see the indigenous women, the descendants of the Aborigines in Hawaii, that's all you see is bracelets, gold bracelets up and down the wrist. It's like ritual. They won't even leave home without it if you're naked. You gotta understand that a lot of this is genetic memory.
bones. A royal treasure, entombed more than 2,000 years ago. This remarkable footage, shot by Iraqi archaeologists, is an exclusive record of their extraordinary discoveries. For the very first time, the tomb of an Assyrian queen had been uncovered intact. The royal sepulchre still displayed a curse to protect its occupants.
Should anyone...
Is it just me, or do you guys not see how big these bracelets are? Versus go back.
This remarkable footage, shot by Iraqi
Look how wide these bracelets are.
archaeologists, is an exclusive record of their extraordinary discoveries. For the
Are these when they mix with the giants? Remember all these stories of giants ruling? Look at these bracelets.
very first time, the tomb of an Assyrian queen had been...
Look at this guy's, this fat, full-aged man. Look at his wrist that could not feel this bracelet. And this is a woman's bracelet.
uncovered intact. The royal sepulchre still displayed a curse to protect its occupants.
Should anyone break open the seal and remove me from my tomb, let his spirit roam in thirst under the bitter rays of the sun, and may the great gods of the underworld inflict his corpse and ghost with eternal restlessness.
Ignoring the curse, archaeologists excavated more than 125 pounds of beautifully crafted jewelry, crystal goblets, and exquisite carvings. The ancient Assyrians were master goldsmiths and artisans. But the value of this treasure far exceeds its worth in gold. In death, Assyrian queens were lavished with riches.
Isn't this reminiscent of the South American and Central American gold and how they adorned themselves with these gold trinkets, to where the Europeans are like, they're just throwing gold around like it ain't nothing, throwing it in rivers.
But in life, it was her kings who forged history, kings with a taste for empire. In the year 701 BC, King Sennacherib and his army struck out across the desert toward the Mediterranean Sea. The bold Assyrians were determined to conquer all that lay in their path, the cities of Judah, including Jerusalem, and its rebellious king, Hezekiah. Fortress after fortress fell to the Assyrians, but it was the city of Lachish whose brutal destruction is best recorded in the historical record and in the Bible.
It's funny how they say the Lachish. What was the name of the Mayans? Okay, today we're taught My ancestors are called the Mayans. But when we look at the Mayans, my ancestors, they'll show you that they weren't called the Mayans. That there's other names, that they're called the Quiché or the Quiche people. This place is called the Quiche. That's very interesting.
The siege of Lachish is a beautiful example of how
And the Mexicans are called the Quiché, the Quiche.
an Assyrian army descended on a city, surrounded it, besieged it, reduced it, and took away its inhabitants into slavery, those that were not executed, men, women, and children. Their technique was very simple.
It's funny how they do that.
And took away its inhabitants into slavery, those that were not executed, men, women, and children.
Don't really show the phenotypes.
Their technique was very simple. It was brutal conquest, fast-moving conquest, systematic, efficient conquest. And on the bas-reliefs in Assyrian palaces, you see the siege engines, the soldiers moving up the mounds with the shields above them, protecting them from the debris thrown down below. But they had no hope in hell. Those guys were professional soldiers. It was a machine.
From the capital city of Jerusalem, King Hezekiah knew an Assyrian attack was inevitable. He raced to fortify the city and ordered an underground aqueduct dug, a desperate effort to protect the city's water supply in the face of a siege. Hezekiah's plan worked. The Bible tells us the Lord saved Jerusalem, and the king of Assyria returneth shamefaced to his own land. Sennacherib's version of the conflict was found on a clay prism unearthed at Nineveh. It matches the Bible story down to the smallest details, but its point of view is sharply different.
But as for Hezekiah the Jew, who did not bow down in submission to my yoke, 46 of his strong-walled towns I besieged and conquered. The awful splendor of my lordship overwhelmed him.
Stories are told from different angles, but they are in agreement.
Look at this. There we go. Here we finally see it. Look at his hair, his springy hair. Look at his beard. See how his sideburns come around his cheeks? You see around his eye like raccoon, but it's just reminiscent of a beard. You see how his chin is so pronounced? Because that's not his chin, that's his beard. See how his nose is like a medium-sized nose. That's the full-bearded Afro people of Oceania, Polynesia, the Afro-Americans, Afro-Mexicans. This is the phenotype that they show, because those are our ancestors.
Angles, but they are in agreement. If you'll have to tell about what happened today and I'll have to tell, we'll tell different stories. We have the story of Sennacherib invading to this country. Each tells...
You see this? That's a Native American. Look how he can't grow any facial hair. Look his nose, look his European, yet Mongoloid features.
Basically, about the same historical event with absolutely no contradictions.
No contradictions but one, the result. In Sennacherib's version, Hezekiah is shut up in Jerusalem like a caged bird. But in the Bible, the Assyrian armies are held back by Jerusalem's walls. It is perhaps the earliest example of spin doctors at work. The God of the Israelites has the last word. I will break the Assyrian in my land, the Bible says, for through the voice of the Lord shall the Assyrian be beaten down. Isaiah chapter 6. And the Bible tells us God does destroy Nineveh, throne of the great Assyrian kings. It wasn't the first such annihilation. Long before, the Almighty had laid waste an entire civilization. There is not a single mention of their name in the Bible, but they were called Sumer, and they told the story of a great flood.
Now these who we're going to talk about now is the ancestors of who we consider the Israelites, which is the Yashuranites, my ancestors.
It's one of the most familiar of all Bible stories, the saga of Noah's Ark. An angry God, a wooden boat, a deluge. It's the story of Noah and his family escaping to the ark with every species of animal and surviving the punishing flood, while the rest of mankind is destroyed. It's a primal tale, stirring our deepest hopes and fears. A story found in the Bible, but also in another ancient text, a text discovered in the ruins of Sumer. Early this century, a group of Mesopotamian tablets were translated. They revealed the earliest known legend of a cataclysmic flood. The world's very first written epic, it is the story of the mythic king Gilgamesh. His tale of a great flood predates the Bibles by at least 2,000 years.
For 7 days and 7 nights, the flood had swept over the land, and the huge boat had been tossed about by the storms.
The boat then runs aground on a mountain. He sends out birds, which is the story which has an eerie similarity to the story of the Bible.
The thing that we don't realize is that when they talk about the Bible and they write the Bible, they write these people who we consider our patriarchs, our ancestors, as simple people, shepherds, carpenters, just everyday run-of-the-mill people. But when you go into these different personalities, different people, like Moshe, you realize he wasn't just a shepherd, that he was a king of Cush for 40 years, that he was a prince of Egypt, that he was the king of Israel. When we look at Abraham, they say that he was just a wanderer. He's just a nomad. But he had a standing army of 600,000 people. He came from the greatest civilization, the Sumerian people. When they talk about Noah,